Hello. Sorry, trying to get my screens all adjusted here. I'm running a little late tonight. Been out working on my car. Hello. Sorry. Shut up. Jared Williamson first. Morris Venture Channel second. Nice job. Winner chicken dinner. Okay, so I'm not doing a news prepper live stream thing tonight. I took a poll on YouTube, and the majority of people wanted to talk more about nuclear stuff, nuclear survival, nuclear whatever. What do you need to do? You know, all that kind of jazz. So I figured that's what we would. Thank you, Jared. I figured that's what we would talk about tonight. I got the microphone facing the right way for you guys. So I know a bunch of you guys were you got the microphone on wrong. Whatever. Gonzo 308 or Gonzo 38. What's going on? What am I thinking here? Oh, I know what it is. I need to pull up my notes. So I made some notes. I saw a good video and a few articles the other day talking about potassium iodide and who should take it, how much you take, when to take it, all that kind of jazz. So I thought maybe that would make a good topic for this video. And then we can also cover some more things, or maybe I'll do it in another video, I don't know, on sealing up your house for nuclear war. Now, as you guys know, I really don't think that we are going to have a nuclear war. I think that the probability of that happening is very, very low. And so, but I understand that I obviously could be wrong, and things could get out of hand. And so we'll talk about some more of these topics. If you guys have questions about this stuff, then put it in the chat. Do a super chat, do all caps, do @reality survival, do something to make it stand out, because when I'm going through and trying to read like all of the chat lines, I can't really see it very good. So do something to try to get my attention if you can. Got the margarita. It's the perfect margarita, I'm telling you. It's so good. You got to get that tahini mixed in with the salt. It's just lovely. Okay, so while you guys are coming up with some questions and things to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and go through this stuff on potassium iodide. First thing, what does it do to help you? Basically, what happens is your body naturally absorbs potassium 127 out of the air. I believe it's 127. Don't quote me on this stuff. I'll have some resources for you guys afterwards. I didn't send it out on the Substack because I was running late, and so I'll send a follow-up one with the links and everything, or I'll just put them in the description of this video after we're all done here. But your thyroid absorbs potassium 127, and when there is a nuclear war, potassium, 131, I think, is a byproduct of that, and it will be absorbed by your thyroid, and you will get thyroid cancer down the line. And so if you take this potassium iodide before exposure to radiation, okay, because if there's a bunch of, it's not just through food, you can actually even It actually, your thyroid even absorbs it up through breathing and through in the air. And so if you take it, you need to take it before your exposure to radiation. If you don't, it's not going to do you much good because your thyroid will already be saturated with potassium 131, which is bad for you. So you want to make sure that you take it ahead of time if possible. So have it ready. Quick question here. Morris Venture Channel says, can you use apple juice? You can use apple juice, not apple juice. You can use apple pectin. There is a slight difference between the two, from my understanding. So, but apple pectin is one of many different kinds of chelating agents. I did a whole video on this, so you should really check that out if you want to know more about this. There are different kinds of chelating agents, basically stop the absorption of different kinds of radiation. So from different isotopes, from strontium and I don't even remember, uranium and iodine or potassium, and all these other different elements that are byproducts of the nuclear explosion. So there's different ones, different chelating agents that you can take for different things. I don't remember off the top of my head what apple pectin does, but I don't believe that it's the same as potassium iodide. Potassium iodide, I believe, is what what it's called. So anyway, sorry if I didn't get it right, Jared. So you can get these pills on Amazon and all that kind of stuff, but you want to have them readily available to take at first notice of there be any, if there's any sort of radiation incident. So should everyone take it? Yes, that is the bottom line answer. Who should get the doses if you don't have very much? People who are 20 years of age or younger should get the doses if you don't have enough to give everybody. Okay. Now, the reason is not because older people wouldn't potentially get cancer. They could, but for some reason, younger people, they did a study, and I'll put the link to it down in the description below, but basically the study showed that people who were 20 years and younger were more susceptible to getting thyroid cancer in the long term after this was after World War II in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So younger people are more susceptible to basically absorb more of it. I don't really understand the age difference on that, but there's this internet rumor going around that people who are 50 years or older shouldn't take it because you'll be dead before you could potentially have it. That's not necessarily the case. There really hasn't been a ton of studies on exactly how long it takes with how much exposure and all that kind of stuff. It is a slower acting thing, and it would potentially affect you down the road. But 50 is the new 30. So there's no reason for older people not to take it if you have it. That's just silly. So when should it be taken? It should be taken before exposure to radiation. How much should you take? For adults, you want to take 130 milligrams. For kids that are 12 to 18, if you're over 150 pounds, then you also take 130 milligrams. And the recommendations that I'm reading here were basically taken from a New York State Department of Health website, which I'll also link down below once this is over with. And MedCram, the YouTube channel MedCram, had a great video on this, and that is where I found these different resources after watching his video. He links to a bunch of stuff, so I went and checked it out, and that's where it was. So you can check out his video as well, because he probably does a better job explaining it, and he probably doesn't mispronounce things or say the wrong thing like I do. All right, so if you are kids from 3 to 12 should take 65 milligrams. But in an emergency situation, it's okay for them to take the whole 130 milligram tablet. If the babies are from 1 month to 3 years old, then they should take 32 milligrams, and from birth to 1 month, 16 milligrams. If kids are too young to swallow the pills, you can crush it and mix it with food or water for lower, in order to lower the dosage. Okay. How long should you take it? Once daily until the radiation exposure has passed. So nominally, that would be a couple weeks. How long should you take it? I already said that. But then you also want to just listen to local guidance. You have your shortwave radio, your AM, FM, whatever, have those out there, and that will, you just follow their guidance, because they're checking the levels and all that kind of stuff. Again, these videos are for a limited strike situation. All right. I am not trying to tell you or give you advice, Tyler. I'm not trying to give you advice on how to live through the nuclear apocalypse where it's an all-out full exchange. Okay. I'm just talking about if there is a handful of bombs that go off in a limited exchange, and which is far more likely to happen than a whole, all-out complete catastrophe. All right. Let's see here. Next one is storage life. Storage life is about 5 to 7 years, but if it's kept in a cool, dark place, it'll likely last a lot longer than that. Which iodine pills should you take? Now, there is the ThyroSafe, and what is the other ones that are kind of marketed towards preppers? Iostat. Those are fine, but they're more expensive. You can just Google or go onto Amazon or whatever and type in potassium iodide, and you can just get a whole bottle of them a lot cheaper, and then that's fine. You don't have to get ones that are specifically made for nuclear war. Any potassium iodide 130 milligram tablet should be fine. Just make sure that it's from a reputable source, somebody it's FDA approved or whatever, that kind of thing. Are there side effects? Not much, which is why it's sold over the counter. If you have a thyroid condition, you want to check with your physician, make sure it's safe with you. Those people with hyperthyroidism might have some issues, and people who are allergic to shellfish, you may also want to check with your physician as well and make sure that that it's right for you. It's right for your situation. Okay. And that's pretty much that. That is pretty much that. So let me go see what questions you guys have. I'll answer some questions here for a little bit. Van Liberty says, is my survey meter calibrated? No, it is not. I have not sent it off because I don't really think that we're going to have a nuclear war. But I might one of these days. They're a couple months behind from what I understand. I did call them and talk to them about the process and everything. The website for that, if you guys want to send yours off, is KI4, the number 4 and U.com, and they can calibrate that. Yeah, Van, you should send it in if you're worried about it. I have a couple of other cheapo meters as well, but I'm not so worried about it that I'm going to send it off right now. I really don't think it's that big of an issue. Because honestly, if something happens and we go down to the basement, we bunker in, I'm just going to stay down there for 2 weeks, and then it'll be good. It'll be fine. Illiterate Inc. I don't believe that eating bananas will sufficiently do it, but I could be wrong. All right. I don't have a buzz. I just started drinking. I'm just in a good mood. I was working on my truck all day. As you can see, my hands are all dirty. I got my dirty hands shirt on. Um, the dirty hands actually is from not so much working on my truck. It's foam filler or foam like gap filler because I am foam filling my snowblower tires. I end up getting some on there and that shit's super sticky and it won't come off. So it'll wear off. You tell Mike you're late again. You're grounded. All right. Black Knight says he has kelp supplements that are high in potassium iodide. That's cool. I mean, a bottle of them, a bottle of like 120 capsules or tablets or whatever it is only like 30 or $30 or so. I don't know, something like that. Not too terrible. Okay, I'm not sure I understand your question, Kayla. She says, saying that if you didn't breathe in fallout and you're in a shelter with an air filter, what's the point of taking potassium iodide if the only threats would be gamma, beta radiation? Not sure I 100% follow you there exactly. It's basically just a preventative measure. The whole taking potassium iodide, it's preventative measure so that your thyroid gets it's basically soaked with that chelating agent, with that potassium, and then, or that potassium iodide, then it keeps you from absorbing any more of that element. Now, ideally, you would be sheltered in your home and you wouldn't go outside, and you don't need an air filter. That's not necessarily true. You don't have to seal your house off and all that kind of stuff. And we can get into talking about this a little more if you guys want to. Somebody out there is telling everybody to put plastic sheets up and seal their house off, and that's totally unnecessary. I don't know what the confusion is on this. It's a good idea to have plastic and duct tape in case you get broken windows. Then you can just tape up some plastic around the windows. And the whole idea behind that is just to keep the dust from coming in. So if you live in a modern house that has basic construction standards, you don't have wind and dust just blowing into your house all the time. That would be very unusual. If you have like a door sweep without weather stripping or something like that, just take some duct tape and put over that or whatever. No big deal. But you don't have to seal everything off. That's totally unnecessary. And you don't have to filter the air and all that kind of stuff. The irradiated particles in the fallout is primarily, it's mostly bigger, heavier particles. It's all that dirt and crap that after the bomb went off that got sucked up into the plume, and as it's coming back down, it's been irradiated and it's now radioactive. And so you need to give that stuff about 2 weeks to fall and settle on your house and settle around your house and all that kind of stuff. And after about 2 weeks, it loses about 99% of its radioactivity. And so you just stay in your house. Just don't go outside. If you do go outside during that time frame, then you do want to wear a respirator or at least an N95 mask, a properly fitted one. But better off would be to have a gas mask, like from Mira Safety or something like that, with a CBN, chemical, biological, nuclear rated filter, and then make sure that you decontaminate and come into the house, take your clothes off very slowly, make sure your hair is covered and all that when you're out there, all that jazz. And put those clothes that potentially had any contamination on them in a safe place, somewhere where not close to where you're sheltering. Hopefully that answered your question, Kayla. If not, put it in there and I'll try to readdress it. Okay, I'm trying to. Illiterate Inc. says I came here for fear porn. It's got his Kleenex and everything. Well, you came to the wrong spot because I'm not really. I don't really do that. Morris Fincher says she bought 50 liters of apple juice at the Dollar Tree. That's hilarious. I mean, it's still good for you, I guess. Mr. Landfill, thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Wondering your opinion on how long prior do you need to be taking it if an emergency happens? It doesn't matter. I mean, basically, if you just take the tablet, prior to your exposure, the day of or whatever, then you should be fine. You don't have to have like multiple days warning or anything like that. At least that's my understanding. You just start taking it, take that one tablet per day, and you should be good to go. Home security recommendations for an EMP or nuke aftermath. It's hard to say. So let's talk about this for a second, because if we're talking about a limited strike, so let's say there's five bombs went off. Okay, we traded nukes with Russia. 5 different nukes come over. It's extraordinarily unlikely. Okay, it is exceedingly unlikely. But let's, for the sake of argument, we'll say that happened. So let's say that it hit the 5 biggest cities, right? In a limited strike, the targets would be far more likely to be cities with high population densities rather than strategic targets like military bases and stuff like that, because they're going to want to cause as much damage, as much infrastructure damage as possible, and to cause as much chaos as possible, right? So they're going to hit New York, Chicago, probably Houston. They'll get the ones where they get the double effect, that has like big infrastructure and stuff. So like Houston has a lot of refineries and all that kind of stuff. New York's the financial sector. You've got shipping and stuff there with, in Chicago. So those kinds of cities, maybe LA would be another one, and then maybe Seattle or something. I don't know, just picking random ones. So the only people who have to shelter in place are the people that live immediately around those cities. So if you have the city here and you live like within the zone around that city, say, depending on the size and the yield of the weapon, 50 miles. So, something along those lines. If you live in a 50-mile radius from where that nuclear bomb went off, then you probably need to shelter in place. The other people who would have to shelter would be the people who live downwind from those cities where the prevailing winds are pushing the fallout towards. So if you live in that plume where, where that tail, I've showed you guys that nuclearsecrecy.com before. That's a great website to go to, nuclearsecrecy.com. Check it out. And you can put in different yields of nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff. And you can see where, with this wind direction at this many miles per hour, this is where the fallout would be. So that might be, say, 100 miles. If you're in that little stretch, say 100 miles from the bomb, then you would have to, shelter in place for a couple of weeks. But everybody else in the country, you don't have to get into your shelter. You don't have to worry about fallout. Okay. You wouldn't have to do anything. So your home security stuff could be just the way that your normal home security is. Now, the people in those cities and say, however, it all depends on how power grids are laid out in that area and all that kind of stuff. But most of the people that are, let's just say a 30 to 50 mile area are probably going to lose power, right? There's going to be sections that are going to lose power around those areas. Now, if you're more in the rural area and you're on a different power production, from a different power facility or something like that, then you could potentially still have power. It just kind of depends on how it's all broken down. But the rest of the country, you're not going to have to go, hide and bunker in place for 2 weeks. You'll be able to do what you need to do. Now, do I think that life would carry on as normal? No, I don't. I think that there would be a whole lot of fear and panic and craziness and chaos and civil unrest and down the line, right? But it wouldn't be, it's not the nuclear apocalypse that everybody's thinking of. It doesn't mean that everybody has to shut down. So when we talk about these things, it's only applicable to you if you happen to be in an area where you had problems, you know what I'm saying, where a bomb actually hit. So it's pretty unlikely if you live in a rural area, if you live, not close to some of those big cities, that you're going to have a problem in a situation like that anyway. So Jared Williamson says, how much KI do I need if I'm at ground zero? You won't need any. You won't need any at all. All right. Pharmacies are out of potassium iodide in Canada. Well, you can order it on Amazon. I ordered another bottle last night just because the stuff that I got's a few years old. So I was like, well, I'll get some more. So good. Canadian Prepper is selling some. Of course he is. Electron Sean, what's going on? All right, I'm just trying to get caught up here. If you guys got questions, make them stick out so I can see them. I will try to answer the best I can. No, I don't think you can use potassium iodide to purify water. I don't know about that for sure. I know iodine you can. I'm not sure about potassium iodide. I don't know. Or EMP shields. Why not? Okay, here's wait. Okay. You guys chat too fast. I can't keep up. Morris Adventure Channel says, what should you get besides the EMP shield? Just food, water, self-defense, health and medical. Have a way to travel and bug out. Make sure all your admin stuff's covered. Power generation. And what am I forgetting? There's another one in there. I don't know. There's really a commonality of survival in all the different types of survival situations. If you go and you check out the Disaster Preparedness 101 lesson on my website, AmericanPreppingAcademy.com, go through that lesson. It'll basically prepare you. If you do all the things that it talks about on there, it's going to prepare you for pretty much as well as you can be prepared for pretty much any situation. With nuke stuff specifically, if you wanted to get gas masks, then that might be a good thing. But honestly, you should really just try not to go outdoors for the couple of weeks, if at all possible. Just stay inside if you were a person that had to shelter. Again, if you didn't live close to it, if it didn't explode around you, then you're not going to have anything to worry about. All right. You really don't need to filter the air. I mean, it's fine if you want to, but it's not really necessary. Black Knight 88 says you might need an air filter if the enemy nukes Yellowstone. Yeah. I mean, if that sets off the super volcano, I guess. What about garden usable soil, Utah Mike? So, okay, if you're in an area that was hit, if you're in an area that gets fallout, let's say, if there's really not a lot you can do, right? Because the dust is just going to be falling out of the clouds in the air, and whatever the case may be, and it's going to go everywhere, and then those areas are going to be contaminated for growing for quite a while. Now, if you had the foresight to lay down some big tarps or something like that, and stake them down or whatever, so that the fallout landed on top of the tarp, and then you could just, after the couple of weeks when it had lost some effectiveness of it, you could fold that up and take it somewhere and bury it or whatever. Then that particular patch of ground would probably be fine to grow in and stuff like that. Or if you had a greenhouse, whatever soil's inside of that would probably be fine. But in this situation, in a situation where we're talking about a limited exchange, there would be plenty of infrastructure after the fact, to have the ability to come in and have people do soil remediation, to remove the topsoil and all that kind of stuff, and then bring in fresh stuff from other places and all that kind of thing. Now, if it was an all-out exchange, then that's going to be a different situation, because there's going to be contamination all over the place, and it would be just a really bad day for everybody. But yeah, I mean, you can, there would be ways to go about it. I mean, I think you'd only probably have to remove, 4 to maybe 6 inches of topsoil, something along those lines, and put that and bury it in a hole somewhere or something like that, far from your house or something. And then, just amend on top of that additional, cleaner soil or whatever that you got from an area that wasn't contaminated. Sorry, I'm trying to read your guys' comments. David Jones says the thing is, if you made it to find good water and food. Yep. And that'd be hard part. Again, if it's a limited strike, you're going to have the rest of the country that's going to be able to come in and bring food and all that kind of stuff. If it was, an all out exchange, then everybody's going to be, I mean, that's it. That's the apocalypse kind of scenario, right? That very few people are going to survive from. I don't think apple juice works, Cat Lady. I think it's apple pectin, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So I'd recommend, if you guys are curious, you go watch that video. If you type in radiation poisoning reality survival into the YouTube search bar, it'll bring up that video. And it talks about all the different chelating agents that you could use for various different types of radiation. I think there was like 6 or 7 or so different kinds of agents. Baking soda was one. Tums, the stuff that Tums is made of, is another one. Apple pectin was another. Potassium iodide. There was another one. Geez, I can't remember for sure. Check out that video though. It's got all of them on there. So Nomad 4 channel, I guess, whatever, says, how far do people safely live from Chernobyl? The exclusionary zone's not that big around Chernobyl. But the difference, there's a vast difference between a nuclear explosion and a nuclear plant meltdown. So I've done a video talking about nuclear plant meltdowns. They're extraordinarily unlikely here in the United States because of the way that they're built. And they're just way safer than Chernobyl was. Also, there's a lot of backup plans and stuff in place that you can manually scram those rods and you can cool them down and all this other stuff. So it's really not a very likely scenario. But the difference is that a power plant, basically you just have fission. And so the fission is a slower process, and the decay process for those isotopes are slower, and so that radiation is going to last a lot longer. With a nuclear bomb, you have fission turning into fusion and then fission again, and so the half-life of all those isotopes is a lot shorter. It burns out faster, if you can think about it like that. And so they're just different, you know what I'm saying? The way that the radiation affects people, how long its half-life is, and all that kind of stuff is just a lot different. In a nuclear power plant, if you actually did have a meltdown and the plume was to escape, that lasts way longer, and it's a lot more difficult to contaminate or to decontaminate and all that kind of stuff. So those situations are not good. Okay. Gub 15 says, post EMP, the country would wipe itself out. Yeah, a lot of it. We're talking about a limited nuclear strike here in this one, but Utah Mike, I don't think that it would take down the grid entirely. It might. It's possible. It probably would depend on which cities were hit and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to say, but the grid is fairly resilient in its ability to transfer power from one grid to the other, and to move power from, to transfer resources and all that kind of stuff. They've done a pretty good job with that. So it's difficult to say for sure. Those cities, though, and the regions around those cities would definitely have power loss for sure. The internet would probably not be down. The internet is very decentralized, and there's a lot of different nodes, for guiding traffic and all that kind of stuff. So unless they just happen to hit all the critical nodes, then probably not. The financial situation wouldn't be good for sure. Let's see here. So there's lots of different size. Jim, U.S. Navy ET1 retired, says, does China and Russia also like 8 megaton warheads? They have all different sizes of warheads, and the warheads themselves are actually adjustable. You can change the yield for what your particular use and desire is. So, and this a lot of this idea, like a lot of people have this concern that Russia has these, like the Tsar Bomba and all this kind of stuff. Well, the Tsar Bomba it's a bomb, right? And it has to be flown on an aircraft and then dropped. There's no chance of a Russian bomber flying from Russia and bringing in some of those mega weapons over here. Russia does this thing where, and they have for a long time, they And it's because they don't have the financial ability to keep up with us militarily. I mean, that's the reason that the Soviet Union lost the first time. So what they would do is they would go and produce something that was bigger than something that we produced. And then they would tout that to their people as, we've got bigger bombs, we've got, all that kind of stuff. But the reality of the situation is that they didn't have very many of those. They didn't have a way to deliver them effectively. And so it's almost all propaganda. So this concern about utilizing these massive weapons and these, huge nuclear bombs and all that kind of stuff, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to see exceedingly large bombs in some sort of a limited exchange like that. Most of their ICBMs and their the sea-launched missiles and all that kind of stuff are much smaller warheads. And we do the same thing for ours. A lot of ours are also smaller. So and the thing is that you don't really need, because there's diminishing returns on that. So for example, and I had a graphic on this and I wish I still had it, but says I don't remember the exact numbers off of it, but let's say that you had a 5 megaton warhead, and then at the same, and maybe that affected an area, say this big. It doesn't matter how many miles really, but then if you doubled it, and let's say you had a 10 megaton warhead, well, that area would only go from like this big to like this big. It only gets slightly larger. It doesn't double the actual size of the area just because you double the size of the warhead. And that is for various reasons of physics that I probably couldn't explain adequately. But so my point here in saying this is that a lot of people are really concerned about these big warheads. They don't need to be concerned about the big warheads, A, because most of them are not deliverable, and B, because you don't really need to use them. You don't have to have something huge. If you detonate even a 20 kiloton or a 50 kiloton device over the top of New York City or some other large metropolitan area, there will be so much chaos and damage caused from that it doesn't matter if it doesn't destroy the whole city. The chaos that ensues behind it will take care of the rest. You know what I'm saying? So we've learned this throughout the testing, throughout the 60s and all that kind of stuff, that you don't have to have a giant warhead to cause the problems that you think it does. You can be strategic and you can have smaller warheads and be able to still fulfill your strategic goals just fine. Okay. Let's see. What did this say? According to the CDC, somebody had something on the CDC here, and they are a highly reliable source. Okay. Kayla Wilds, according to the CDC, if iodine 131 were released into the atmosphere, people could ingest it in food products or water or breathe it in. Just treat it as alpha particles then. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you just, if you know that there is radiation outside or if there's fallout in your area, don't go outside. Just stay inside. If you stay inside, you don't have to worry about wearing a gas mask the whole time. You don't have to do any of that. Like I said, those particles that are coming down are heavier particles for the most part. And if you stay indoors, if you stay in a basement, in a good shelter location, you shouldn't really have any issues. Now, the reason that, like, let's say that the nuclear bunkers and all that kind of stuff, the command centers for the military and all that, the reason that those had air filtration systems in them was, well, primarily two reasons. One, they were underground and they were sealed in by 24 inches of concrete and several feet of dirt. And so they needed a way to just get air into the facility. two, since those were potentially targets, those areas were potentially targets, they assumed that there would be a high degree of fallout and all that kind of stuff in the area. So that's why they had to put filtration systems in there. But if you're somebody who's living, on the outskirts of a town, a long ways away, from a city center or whatever, maybe you're not right in the direct path of the fallout and all that kind of stuff, then you're not going to really have to worry about that. It's those areas that had, really high concentrations close to the site and that kind of stuff where you would have enough particulate and this stuff in the air that you would have to worry about that. Most people who are removed from that situation are not going to have to experience that. All right. Everybody is really excited about apple pectin. It's kind of funny. Yeah, Van Liberty, there will be a localized EMP. Basically, the EMP is only going to be line of sight from the bomb, pretty much. So maybe slightly farther, but not too much. So if you're where you could see the city or something like that, then that's where that EMP is going to hit. And again, that's going to cause all kinds of problems with vehicles and the grid and all that kind of stuff. But if it were only those 5 missiles, we could rebuild all that. It would take a long time, but we could do that. EMP is not really a great first strike option. It's really not. Electroshawn, in my opinion, it's not. And the reason is because when you do an EMP as your first strike, you're especially if they did an EMP like 250 to 300 miles above the center of the country or whatever to try to collapse the whole grid, that is a mutually assured destruction type attack. Okay, that they are going to respond in kind, and so it doesn't benefit, because now you don't have the element of surprise anymore, right? You've lost your element of surprise. You've now you're going to get a response, and you risk the potential that maybe they don't respond in kind. Maybe they just come back with a full out, counterstrike, nuclear counterstrike, and that sucks now too, because, well, it's nuclear and that's not going to be good. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know who it is that's saying that they think that EMPs is a good first strike, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It really doesn't. If you wanted to get 4 or 5 missiles off, hit, a few big cities or whatever, you would just do that right off the get-go. All right. At least that's the way I see it anyway. And then you would hope that took them by surprise or whatever the case may be. I mean, all this is so unrealistic. That's why I even hate talking about it, because none of these countries are going to do this, because it's mutually assured destruction in the end, and people are not going to want to give up power. They don't want to give up their cushy lifestyles. They're just not going to do this. It's such prepper mental pornography or whatever that it's just really not, it's not even plausible. But whatever. I don't know. That's just my opinion, I guess. Talking with bots is very chilling. Or do we have some bots in here? I don't know. Maybe so. Enrique Pavia says, from 0 to 10, how much do you think we're getting closer to nuclear war? Shout out from Portugal. I still think that any kind of nuclear detonation in the United States is very low. Couple of 1 or 2%, maybe, not very much at all. In Europe, I'd say 10 to 12%, something like that. I think if there is going to be a strike, some sort of tactical nuclear device utilized or whatever, I think it's most likely to be in Ukraine or possibly London, maybe Paris, something like that. I think it's highly unlikely that it would go in the United States because I assure you 100% Putin does not want anything to do with the US military. Even if we didn't, let's just say it, let's say he set off a nuclear bomb somewhere or whatever the case may be, and we didn't retaliate with a nuclear strike, which is very unlikely, but he wouldn't even want to deal with the conventional response. I mean, if he thinks he's having a hard time with Ukraine, there would be the conventional response that the United States could launch on Russia is so immediately overwhelming that, I mean, I just don't even know how to lay that out for you. It would be immediately devastating and something that Russia wouldn't recover from in a very long time. Okay. No. Okay, Chris, good question. He said, is there any danger if you live by a nuclear power plant and the grid goes out? No, there's not any danger to you. So first off, the power plants are staffed, pretty much all the time, right? And the staff are trained and I've done a video on this topic specifically, but the staff are trained. There are multiple different ways to ensure that the rods get cooled. There's a variety of different techniques they can do it. Some of them can happen automatically, and it happens within and they have backup power and all that kind of stuff too, but they can even do it manually as well. And it literally takes less than a couple of minutes, and they can have the rods stabilized. They train on losing power on a regular basis. They all know how to deal with it, and their plants are designed to be able to cool the rods indefinitely if need be. Okay, so you really don't have to worry about that. There's a lot of people talk about this, the nuclear power plants overheating and then going critical, and then there's these firestorms going everywhere and all this kind of stuff. That's just not reality. That's just not how it works. They can, and most of the plants can actually flood the whole facility if they had to, so that they could cool it that way, even as a last resort. So it's really not a concern. Okay. Good question. Oh, Man Liberty says margarita recipe, please. Okay. So Tanteo jalapeno flavored tequila, and I don't remember the name of the Tres Agaves. That's what it is. It's Tres Agaves margarita mix, and I don't get fancy and do all the Grand Marnier and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really need it, I don't think. I put in 2 ounces of the tequila, and then ice, and then the whatever mixer to raise it to the top of the glass. And then you got to do the salt, the coarse salt, and you got to mix in the tahini in with the salt, and it's lovely. It tastes like slightly spicy lemonade, if you can imagine that. All right. So the backup generators and stuff that they have at those facilities, they have enough fuel to last for several days, but they don't need that long. That's my point. Is to scram the rods. It's literally, I think it's like 90 seconds to do it. It doesn't take very long at all. It might even be less than that if I'm not mistaken, but To do it manually, it's still only like a couple of minutes, and they can have it. They can have those reactors cooled, or have the fuel rods cooled. And there's different things they can do. They can put in the different kinds of rods can go in around it to slow down the fission process. They can also flood the area. There's a whole different variety of things that they can do. Several tools in their toolbox to deal with it. I'm not sure what your question's about, Electron Sean. What safety measures are available to prevent the unexpected or deliberate spread of relevant materials? I mean, if you're talking about the containment facility itself is pretty amazing. Now, those things are made to take a direct hit from a commercial airliner. That's how strong they are, where the actual rods are kept and all that. The likelihood of operatives who would deliberately try to take advantage of panic or chaos. I mean, that everybody would be taking advantage of the panic and chaos, right? Like nobody would be calm. If you think that the George Floyd riots were bad, I mean, riot and looting would be going on even in cities that didn't get hit. Obviously, I mean, the cities that did get hit, people are going to be dead. But the cities, around the area, all across the country, probably there's going to be all kinds of civil unrest if even one went off. So yeah, I mean, the chaos is going to be full bore all over the place. So okay, Manuel Palenka says, does fallout bring gamma, say 50 miles away, or is that just in the blast zone? So basically, as a good rule of thumb, if the building that you're in, if you live in a surrounding area in a nuclear device or a bomb went off, if your structure is still standing and the windows are not broken, you have very little, if any, radiation contamination from the detonation. Now, as you get closer, if you experience broken windows, if you've got some building damage from the blast wave, maybe one wall's pushed in or something along those lines, then you're starting to get to the area where it's possible that you could have received some primary radiation from the device. But most of it is going to be contained right there within the fireball. So if you didn't go up in the fireball, in the thermal wave of that detonation, then you're not going to have an issue with radiation. I hope that makes sense. So there's that zone, that varying zone from the edge of the blast wave to where where the pressure wave pushed some stuff, and basically the radiation contamination amount is going to be falling off dramatically the further you get away from the thermal blast zone. Okay, so at like 50 miles, you're not going to have anything. You're not going to be even close. But at maybe 15 to 20 kilometers, 10 to 12 miles from the actual, ground zero, you might have some radiation there to worry about. The bigger concern for most people on radiation is going to come from the fallout as it's spreading out over 50 to 100 miles or however long, and those particles have gamma, they emit alpha, beta, and gamma radiation, and that's what you have to worry about. That's what you have to kind of bunker in place for a couple of weeks. Randleman, there will be no video games in the apocalypse. Hopefully that answered your question, Manuel. Let's see. Yeah, good answer. AFK1. He said gamma is emitted by the blast and then by the fallout. But if you're a ways away, you'll be okay from the blast radiation. But fallout is going to be the problem. That's correct. Now remember, the danger with alpha and beta, it can be blocked by pretty much a thick layer of clothing or a layer of Tyvek or a poncho or something like that. That'll keep you from getting burns with alpha and beta pretty much. The real concern with alpha and beta radiation is that you inhale it. So if you're outside and fallout is coming down, you need to have a respirator, because you don't want to get that stuff inside of you. If you get that stuff, if you breathe that stuff into your lungs, it's going to do a lot of damage, and it's going to kill you way faster than gamma radiation will. Gamma radiation, your body can actually take quite a bit of gamma radiation as long as it's slow over a long period. If you get high intensity gamma radiation exposure in a short period of time, that's when you can do a lot of damage to yourself. Time, distance, and shielding. Those are the three things to remember. Time, you want about 2 weeks. That'll reduce the gamma radiation from a nuclear bomb by 99%. Distance, you want to be as far away from it as possible. If you're bunkering in your house and you imagine that there's fallout all around the edges of your house and on your roof, and you want to try to put yourself in the center of that if possible, and make sure that you have as much shielding around you as possible. That shielding is thickness. It's got to be thick and dense. So put as much stuff as you can in a pile around you. Sandbags is great. Bricks or masonry, that kind of stuff is good. Concrete is good. Getting subterranean, getting below the ground is really good. That's what you want to do. But if you don't have sandbags, if you don't have, whatever, pile as much crap as you can around you. So the idea, what you want to do here is those photons coming out of that fallout, it's basically just a photon of light, essentially. And you want to try to put up enough stuff in between you and it so that it stops that from going through. That's what you're trying to do. But they can penetrate a lot. So you want to make it as thick as you possibly could. Alexander, a lot of people say this, a lot of people talk about, he says his question is what's the possibility of having more than one EMP strike, like 1 to 3 strikes, which could potentially knock out anything that was previously protected with Faraday cages? So is it possible? Sure, it's possible. It's unlikely, though. It's very unlikely. Even EMPs being used at all is unlikely. I don't know if it was in one of the prepper books or one of the things like that talked about this. I wish people could understand the reality of the strategic response from the United States if this happened. See, that's the thing that I don't think people fully understand, the capability of our ability to respond is so overwhelming that it's just I have to think about what I can say, because I can't say too much on these topics. But I want you to imagine nuclear bombs and EMPs, all the same. It's the same weapon, basically. Were developed in the 60s, right? 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that kind of thing. And you haven't really heard much about any other big weapons developments since that point. So do you think that it's likely? Do you think it's likely that we just didn't ever develop any other big, cool, badass weapons? Really? I mean, do you think that? Because I don't. So anyway, that's all I'll say on that. Oh goodness. Drink bentonite clay. I've never heard that, Susan. You can use bentonite for filtering your water out. Never heard anything about drinking it though. I mean, I suppose maybe. I don't think I would do that, but okay, we're gonna wrap this up before too long. Okay. Man, it is a really good margarita. I'm just saying, it's really good. I'm trying to catch up, you guys. If I missed your question, you guys just chat too much. If I missed your question, just try to put it in all caps or do at reality survival or something. King Baba Yaga says, does solar generators and panels need to be in a Faraday cage? Yes. If you are not going to have them installed and have them protected with an EMP shield, then they need to be put away in a Faraday cage. A solar panel is one huge antenna, and it will definitely be affected by an EMP if we were to have one. I don't know what you're talking about, Sean. Sorry, something about he's recording or something. I don't know. Oh yeah, I mean, I am. Morris Venture says, I don't know we're not going to be attacked. That's not necessarily true. I just don't think it's possible. I don't think it's likely at all. I am far more concerned about the implementation of a central bank digital currency than I am about nuclear war or EMPs or any of that kind of stuff, because the central bank digital currency is the road to serfdom. It is how they take away all of your rights, and it's how they control you in everything they do. It is so monumentally dangerous and such a massive invasion of privacy and a reduction of freedom that honestly, I don't even know how to even categorize how bad it could potentially be over time. I don't think all at once, right at first, that it would be like that bad. But the incrementation, the incremental creeping of the way that our government puts in more and more things over the years, 20 to 25 years after a central digital currency is installed, this is not going to be the same country anymore. There's so many ways that they can track everything that you do, especially when you start to add AI to the picture and big data, where they get big data centers and they can start to analyze purchases and all this kind of stuff. I mean, that's literally where you get to the whole pre-crime kind of situation with, Minority Report and all that kind of crap. And I'm not even joking about that. The AI capabilities to analyze big data and do predictive modeling and all that kind of stuff has come a long way in the last 10 years. And it's getting to the point where it's pretty damn scary, and it's gonna be even worse, especially if there was the ability to monitor all financial transactions, because financial transactions right now are not monitored on a wide scale. We have about 2,700 different financial institutions, and the government doesn't have any ability to go and just monitor that. Okay, it doesn't. If they want to get that information from the banks, they have to send legal process to the banks and then have them send the records. Or if they want, the banks can say, hey, here's some information that we found concerning, and they can take a look at it or whatever. But with the central bank digital currency, all of that changes. All of it changes. And it's a massive reduction in freedom and privacy and all kinds of stuff that I can't even tell you how bad it would be in so many different ways. I can see so many different ways that could fall apart, and it just wouldn't be good. Oh, okay. All right. Morris Venture is not a bot. I can tell you she's not. She's out here all the time. Let's see. Oh, okay. Somebody else. All right. I'm getting lost in your guys' conversations. The world is going to end. No, it's not, Susan. No, it's not. We live at the best time in history. We're gonna have a few rough years. There's gonna be some economic strife. There's gonna be high inflation. We're probably gonna have a currency reset. There's gonna be some bad bumps over the road. But in the long term, the United States is sitting better than anybody else in the world. And you are extremely blessed if you live here, because you will face much less heartache and turmoil than the rest of the world. Now, I can't say the same for Africa, Southeast Asia, Europe, China. They're going to get hit hard between now and 2030. It is ugly. It'll be bumpy here, but it ain't going to be nearly that bad. All those prepper channels out there are telling you that, World War III is coming, and Civil War is going to happen, and nuclear war, this and all this, the apocalypse and all that kind of stuff. And they're just telling you that because they're making money, and it's really unethical to me. I can't stand it. I don't like it. I don't even really like talking about these subjects because I think it's so unlikely of anything's going to happen. I want to pull up the poll that I did. I want to see real quick before I go where it's at. How do I even find it? Dang it. Oh, here it is. So let's see. We go to community. So this poll, yeah. So 52% of people, I asked a poll and it said, what video topics do you guys want to see next? Or put your suggestions in the comments. And I said more on nuclear war and EMP. 52% of people, by far the largest response, said they wanted to know more about that stuff. 14% said they wanted to know more about Civil War. 9% more about World War III. I asked about news articles and live streams, 5%. So most people don't like those. And then more on wilderness survival skills was 20%. So by, a wide margin, people want to talk about nuclear war and EMP. And I understand it's because you're concerned and all that kind of stuff. It's just, I really think that people need to worry about like their basic prepping stuff first. I mean, I really do. Like if you're spending money going out and building a bunker in your basement and all that kind of crap, and you don't have your credit cards paid off, what are you doing? What are you doing? And if you're going into debt to buy stuff, prepping stuff because you think that the world's going to come to an end, what are you doing? You're making a huge mistake. Don't do that. Don't go spending all your money and emptying out savings accounts and putting money on credit cards and all this kind of bullshit because you think that the world's going to come to an end. It is not going to come to an end. Okay. Definitively, it will not. Even if there was some nuclear exchange or something, the world's not going to come to an end. It's going to keep going. Just worry about yourself. Worry about your family. Worry about your neighborhood. And make sure that you're not abdicating your responsibility as a citizen to take part in citizen-led government. if you're so focused on fear and the world coming to an end, and that's keeping you from running for your local school board, that's a problem. Okay, that is a problem. That is why we are in the situation that we are in, because we have abdicated our responsibility as citizens and we have not taken part in citizen-led government. All right, you need to go run for school board, run for dog catcher. I don't care. Do something. Be a member of your local government. That is so much more critically important than anything else that I can tell you guys. I'm dead serious about this. If we want to have a society that is not a socialist society, we have to have people who are not socialists in control of the government. And the only way that you can get in control of the government is if you learn how to be elected by going through the process, practicing, learning how government works, moving from the lower stages to the next higher stages to the next higher stages. It's a 25-year deal. If we want to make sure that our kids don't have to live under socialism, we have to actually start going right now and getting involved in local politics, so that in 25 years from now, we'll have a bunch of people like us in the higher levels of government, because it takes that long. It really does. It doesn't just happen overnight. You're not going to just run for president or whatever, just off the cuff. You have to learn how the system works. It's really, really important. All right. Oh, Diane James says, how long before soil could be safe for the garden? We already talked about that earlier. You probably would have to remove the top 4 to 6 inches of the soil and then re-amend, stuff in on top of that. All right. Gray Man, I've already got some videos on DIY water filtration, specifically for nuclear fallout and all that kind of stuff. So you can check that out if you want. Amen. That's a great verse there. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's good. Most importantly, I don't know how to say your name, DK Lytle. Most importantly, I'm learning how to distill my own whiskey. Now that's important. That's actually a great skill to know, because then you can make ethanol. You can, run your vehicles off of it and all that. My margarita is empty. That means it's time to go. If you got any other questions, put them in there real quick, because we're going to go. But I'm just going to look and see if I missed anything. Yeah, that's true. Anything's possible. State of Oklahoma shall not infringe says no one knows what's going to happen. Anything is possible. Anything's possible, but that doesn't mean anything's probable. All right, because anything is not probable, and everything is not probable. The status quo is a very, very powerful force. All right, it's a very powerful force, and so yeah. That's not true. State of Oklahoma. No, he says he was told by many people, as long as the solar panels are not hooked up, they won't be hurt from an EMP. I don't believe that's true. Nope. Needs to be in a Faraday cage, or you need to have an EMP shield on it, protecting it. Okay. Looks like that is it. All right, I will do another follow-up video on sealing up your house, because we touched on that a little bit, but we didn't talk everything about it. So I'll make a separate video on that. I will put the links to the resources down in the description below. I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. I didn't bombard you guys with affiliate stuff today. One thing I will ask you though is, please go to realitysurvival.substack.com and sign up over there. There's free options. I know money is tight. You don't have to do the paid options. If you do the paid options, you're helping me educate other people about disaster preparedness. And if you decide up for the paid option, then you'll also have some exclusive videos and stuff like that that'll be coming out. But honestly, it's mostly just to support the channel, and I appreciate that. But the free options is great because that allows me to communicate directly with you. Like with the live stream tonight, I sent out a quick post, let everybody know, hey, I'm gonna go live here in a few. I'm gonna try to do the live streams on Thursdays and Sundays. Based off of the results of that poll, we'll probably do Thursdays as the prepper sit rep, where we go through the news stories and stuff like that. And then Sundays, we're probably going to have more like we were tonight, just like a survival and prepping chat. Like we'll just sit and talk and answer your questions and kind of go through different things and all that kind of stuff. Yes. T-Stark 1216, get involved. Speaking of getting involved, did your missus run? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Well, that's it for me, y'all. Don't forget to live 6Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.